Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. Before we dive into this week's episode of Money Never Sleeps, just a quick heads up that the ETH Dublin Hackathon 2023 is just ahead of us in Dublin on May 26th to the 28th at Dogpatch Labs in Dublin. ETH Dublin is the first Web3-focused hackathon conducted on the island of Ireland, and the idea is to create a space for the community to build and attract talent to the Web3 ecosystem. Check out the details on ethdublin.io. So on the show this week, we've got Jesse Phillips, co-founder and CEO of TrustWare, one of the 12 founding teams forming the Techstars Web3 Accelerator class of 2023. TrustWare is a secure, recoverable, non-custodial crypto vault that connects users in a social network for sharing value. Jesse is a seasoned entrepreneur and deep thinker in the blockchain space who is on a mission to revolutionize the way we handle digital assets and payments. With a deep understanding of decentralized technologies and their potential to empower individuals and communities, Jesse is dedicated to creating secure and democratic solutions for the future of finance. Jesse and I dig into what got him into crypto in the first place, the TrustWare vision he formed with co-founder Jonathan Frazier, adjusting to some of the crypto curveballs the world is throwing at TrustWare, and how life experiences are informing the building and scaling of TrustWare. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. Before we dig into TrustWare, you've had a really, really interesting path to get here. And I kind of wanted to dig into that a bit first to see how you got to this point, how you got into crypto, and how you and Jonathan Frazier got together to build TrustWare. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely an interesting path. Most people that I have met are kind of in one camp, right? You're either kind of in the Bitcoin camp or the other side, right? Web3, DeFi, all of that.
Yeah.
So kind of an interesting kind of switch for me, but let's go kind of way back in time. I've always been building companies from day one when I learned, and this is actually kind of an interesting story. I think I was in 5th grade and we had a ticket system. My teacher would give you tickets for good behavior, and you could use those tickets to get out of trouble. So like, let's say you didn't have your homework one day, you could use a ticket for that. Or what a lot of the kids like to do was they would trade their tickets in for a Snickers bar. And I wasn't the best student in the world, but I realized that they were the little Snickers bar. They were not king size, the fun size, right?
Right.
And so the kind of genius part of, and kind of the revolutionary, or I don't know, how do you put this? The rebel, not revolutionary. The rebel part of me basically goes, well, that's cool. Like, I'll spend $350 and go buy an entire bag of these and have as many tickets as I need.
Yeah.
And so anytime I couldn't hand in my homework, I would just kind of magically have these tickets and realize that you could have kind of another economy running around in the back end, or running alongside of this. And my teacher found out, and props to her, Mrs. DiNapoli. She obviously scolded me a little bit, but she didn't kill the entrepreneurial vision. She didn't just say this is completely against the rules. I think to her it was a little bit kind of, I don't know. It was ingenious, I think, in a way,
Yeah.
and
a sign of things to come.
Yeah, and so she kind of supported it. She said, no, you can't do this, but she kind of supported it. And from then on, I was fascinated with kind of the arbitrage and the little things I could do, selling candy at swim meets, all of these different things. And I grew up outside of Boston in a kind of a little suburb about 25, 30 minutes away from the city, and was lucky enough to have an unbelievable dump as well. Most people are probably like, what?
Sweet.
Yeah, but as a little kid, I'd go there and pick up electronics, and for most of the time, it was all about taking them apart, kind of like reverse Legos, and then eventually started building them back up, and could actually build computers and use that to kind of power my fascination and interest with music. But, that was kind of the first foray for me into having computers essentially work for people and what could be done alongside what you were doing as, in your productive lives. And so kind of coming out of college, I studied communications, by the way, but I wrote my thesis in college on emerging technologies and kind of the social sciences side of how at what point do people become uncomfortable with technology, which was definitely something to come, right? Looking at AI.
I read that. I had a look. It's
Yeah.
It's still on your LinkedIn profile.
I keep it there for a reason, because I think it's a really interesting thing, and for people to be able to dive into what the kind of pre-blockchain side of me was like, because it was all, I think, building up to this, right?
Oh, yeah. And you know what I did? I actually downloaded it, took it off of the viewer, downloaded it so that I could do the Control F search, right, for crypto or blockchain, and didn't see either one of those words in there. So as you're saying, it was the pre-blockchain Jesse Phillips.
Yes, it was. And one of the things that really struck me was the findings. And really it was, the more technology you consume, the more comfortable you are with it to come. So kind of at that point, understanding just how digitally native I was and a lot of my peers were, and understanding that, things are to come and we're just kind of going to have to deal with them. But even besides the thesis, one of the really interesting things on there is, I think it's the dedication page, and it's a Steve Jobs quote. And it's, I'll paraphrase it, but it's basically, once you understand that the world is built by people that are no smarter than you, like the edges break apart, you can kind of do amazing things. And that's kind of been governing me ever since. But coming out of school, I was very broke, very obsessed with Bitcoin. One of my college friends basically got me into it after reading part of my thesis. He said, I think you'd like this. And just spending ungodly amounts of time researching blockchain. And at the time, I was dating someone in Buffalo, New York. And my family and I that summer went to Iceland. And I started looking at power really seriously, because I see all this geothermal power. And I'm like, wow, the little I know about blockchain, Bitcoin, this would be an awesome place to start a mine, right? Mm-hmm. Going back to that thing, hey, can we have computers work for us? And Buffalo, New York was the same way, right? Hydroelectric from Niagara, a lot of natural gas. It was just kind of this combination of all these things hitting me. And shortly after, I would say, working for a year it's kind of like a startup accelerator. They had office space and we would evaluate startups coming in. We started Harpia Mining, which was really the first foray into that. And my co-founder and I, Pedro and we built, I think, one of the first models for data-driven analytics in proof of work. And that was really revolutionary for the time. At that point, mining was more of an art than a science. And we said, we think there's something to this, looking at asset price valuation and the network difficulty and the relationships between these things, between the chip level design, the nanometer processes, the electrical consumption, all of these things. We thought, if we can kind of crack the code, then we can predict, how much money we can make. And really this was out of necessity, because neither of us had enough money to actually go out and kind of build the mine that we wanted to. And, and all I was really trying to do was have something running off in the background that would allow me not to, sling drinks for a living, right. And move to Buffalo, which sounds crazy right now, but, young me wanted that. And that was the beginning of everything, right? Sitting in a cubicle in Newton, Massachusetts, just looking at Bitcoin for hours on end. I mean, I slept under that desk some nights. It was an obsession at that point, and it never really stopped.
Wow. And you did that. That was Harpia Mining. You did that for a few years, didn't you?
Yeah, we ran it actually up until 2019. And a lot of the major mining providers now, or I guess like major data centers now, run some version of it, whether it was based on something that we did or just, all of us kind of coming to the same conclusions. This really did become kind of standard for people to look at it in this way. And mining at that point was really throw a bunch of computers into a warehouse and try to figure out the dust situation. It was not, Riot or Marathon or, some of these bigger providers where they've got a CFO, a CTO. I mean, this was the true cowboy era of that time. And so, it went on for a while, and we started kind of getting into actually trying to place people all around the world, which was exciting because it really coincided with this idea that still kind of keeps me fired up, although kind of moved on from this, which is that Bitcoin is the ultimate economic battery, right? You are converting electrons into hard money. And if we could just use renewable energy to do that, well, we could pay renewables back faster. And that was the thesis. So we started trying to place people all around the world. I mean, I don't talk about this a lot, but interspersed in here is many attempts at buying power plants and standing up mines as well.
Wow.
But, you know, that was, yeah, it was another chapter in that history, and then kind of moved on from that to support those people in the next chapter, so to speak.
Right. And that was Binance. You moved on to Binance next, didn't you?
Yeah. What a wild ride that was. We had actually, speaking of the power plant, this was kind of COVID time. And we were going out to buy a power plant again in upstate New York with the idea of converting it all into mining. And then there was a nice little 100 acres in the back where I wanted to put the solar panels. But I eventually, you know, kind of ran out of money doing that, really kind of zeroed myself out. I would say kind of hit rock bottom in that period between essentially ending Harpia. And this was, you know, coming out of 2018. This was one of my favorite times to work in crypto, right? Because the tourists are gone, but it was also a very challenging time to try to make a living in it. And Binance essentially called as I had kind of hit the end of my bank account, so to speak. And I said, okay, let's do it. So
They threw you a lifeline.
Yeah. And I'm very thankful for that. At the time, it was probably a very different organization than it is now. Mm-hmm. But I went over there to support the BD efforts for the pool, for the mining pool. And we did North America, South America, a little bit of EU. And I managed, I think, a pipeline of about 75 active clients. To this day, I have PTSD over Telegram because it was every time zone you can imagine, people all over the world. But what a fascinating time to really be at the heart of mining and see it kind of grow into an actual industry. I mean, this is when everyone was figuring out how to turn their companies into essentially fiat arbitrage machines into Bitcoin. And just to be at the center of that was wild. Got to see so many cool mines and really get deep.
Yeah, no. And seeing all that stuff from the inside is just so incredibly important and informed, I'm sure, what came next. Obviously, before you jumped to launch TrustWare with Jonathan Frazier, there was the stop off at Rain, the Middle East crypto exchange, in between all that, yeah?
Yeah, it was a great opportunity. Effectively, I was kind of done with the BD side of things. I was really looking for a way to take a lot of the learnings that I had at Binance and convert them into kind of something that was more meaningful on the product development side. And really, this is also kind of, I think, you know, I wouldn't say that I have many superpowers, but I think I'm pretty good at seeing the future. And
that's a pretty good superpower.
Yeah, I think that's why, though, Jonathan is such a great co-founder as well, is because, you know, together we can see the future, but we can also focus on what's right in front of us to get there. But we'll go into that in a minute. Right now, basically, at this point, I was seeing the consolidation of mining and kind of the dream of having your own, you know, facility was slowly fading away. There was a point at which I started advising for and working with the company. And that's another story. But really, this is kind of the idea that in order to continue working in the space that I truly love, need to make a change and broaden my horizons. So I went over to Rain and ran the innovation department there. We built it up. I think we took it from 5 coins to 75, worked with the regulators there, a lot of kind of product development for the end user on the Rain app. It was a fantastic experience and got me over to Dubai for the first time to really see kind of what it was like. Never been there. So
cool. And then at what point did you and Jonathan get together? I know that both you and Jonathan are Draper University grads, and that I think there was a reunion that took place where you and Jonathan got together. You want to shed some light on that?
Absolutely. So Jonathan and I met at Draper University reunion that summer. It was the summer after kind of the Terra Luna, or during the Terra Luna explosion happens. And then I left Rain and actually hiked the Camino, first experience kind of in Spain with my little sister for part of it, and came back, and there was this reunion happening. And I had gone to Draper University at the tender age of 18 years old. I had submitted a business plan out of high school and somehow got in. And so I hadn't been there in 10 years. And I said, what the heck? Let's hop on a plane, and went back to my old haunts in San Mateo. And while we were there, met Jonathan. And it was really, it was just a conversation that started on a bus. We were coming back from something called survival camp, where they try to teach you all different types of skills as an entrepreneur. But one of them is kind of resilience and survival. So they bring you out to this place, and there's a bunch of different activities you can do out in the wilderness. And for a day, they brought us out there again during this reunion. We started talking on the bus back, and just was fascinated with how his mind worked and his experiences. And more importantly than that, just the way of looking at the world and his moral compass, I think, is probably the thing that really stuck out to me. And this is really after having some bad experiences, a lot of good ones, but some bad experiences in the mining side with some people that, really eroded trust. It was only about a 2-hour bus ride, but by the end of that, I was like, this is someone that I could see actually working with, and not just for a little while.
And were you looking for that?
I wasn't at all. In fact,
it was just that bus ride that like, click.
It was the person, right? It's not so much like, I'm not at this point looking to start another company, right? It was almost like a hiatus, like trying to figure out where I was going. And even the idea for TrustWare at that very moment wasn't even a thing. I had just met the person, and I was like, wow, I was shocked, to be real with you. And it was later, essentially, I think it was the next day or the day after, I was actually in a conversation with someone and had the kind of the original idea for this, said, excuse me, ran back in, put it on a whiteboard. And Jonathan and I and a couple of other people have been hanging out, kind of this little group within the reunion. And we just started talking about it, looked at it on the whiteboard. And Jonathan asked me politely, like, do you mind if I work on this with you? And I was like, I don't know where this is going, but absolutely, this would be great. And the original idea was basically, how can we protect people's wallets? I had seen so much stuff out there. I had been hacked in 2018, been SIM swapped. All of my friends in the mining space, in the exchange space, if you have your head over the curb or over the fence line, so to speak, you're a main target, and it's relentless. It's the only number in crypto that continues going up, even if the market goes down, is the value and the amount of hacks. And the original idea was, can we deposit something into a wallet? That wallet essentially prints out an unlocked token, so to speak, where you can hold it somewhere else and nothing can be removed from that wallet. And Jonathan, being the absolute genius that he is, basically over the next kind of, 2 months, we reworked this thing completely together and came up with the base, the base technology base of where we are right now.
It's amazing how fast this whole space moves, because like, you're talking about the summer roughly of 2022. You're talking about a couple of months before that with Terra Luna. And I feel like I'm saying, Jesse, that was just last summer. Right?
Yeah.
And how quickly that you can get going here when you've got this kind of this electric ball of momentum, that when you get two people together that are kind of thinking along the same lines, but then bring something a little bit different to the table, each one of them. Just how strong this can be. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the beauty of entrepreneurship is creating something that actually matters out of nothing. There's no precedent in the relationship between the people before that. There's no precedent in what is being created. It's just the beauty of being able to see your reflection in another person and be like, we bring two different things to the table. You know what it is? It's a marriage, but it's like an innovative marriage where you can create something, and it is your baby at the end of the day, but you create something that the world needs out of thin air. I think that's the magic, but it has to be with the right person. And so when it clicks, like, I'm a big believer in just humans over everything, even in the world of AI and all that. So
I know. And let's dig into TrustWare a bit and tell us why the world needs it right now. And remember that my mom does listen to this podcast.
Amazing. Well, this is for your mom too. This is for everyone. Yeah. At the core of this, in order for any technology to see mass adoption, it truly needs to be able to impact people at the level of their needs. It needs to meet people where they are. My mom is a psychiatrist, so this is a little bit of a shout out to her, but Maslow's hierarchy is something we look at when we think about the purpose of our company too. It defines these needs as our core needs. Security is the next level up. Belonging and kind of your community, esteem, and self-actualization is the top of this pyramid. And we believe that current blockchain technologies are primarily focused on serving the needs of the top of the pyramid. We can see this through stuff like the self-actualization, the creative products like digital art, financial freedom, through digital investments, esteem, which is like your status and influence in your community, your Bored Ape, your token, your rare collectible. We kind of look at this and we want to get to the bottom of the pyramid as fast as possible. And the real idea here is that we need to address people's core needs. So that starts with the ability to access real world value through services. And this, can pay for food, shelter, daily needs, safety and stability, which is knowing that digital assets are safe and secure with an ownership model that users can trust, and belonging, which is recognizing that the blockchain is social in nature and allows user-friendly sign-on, discovery, transactions with the username. And that's really what we do at the end of the day. Our solution is to bring the blockchain down to the level 1 of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs and meet people where they are. Right.
Deep.
So, yeah. So really, let's take a look at kind of how we think we can do that. At the ground level, it's security. This is where Jonathan and I started. It's a secure vault based on trusted security standards like multisig and 2FA. We started talking at Draper University about why on earth is 2FA on blockchain not a thing? And can we take multisig and instead of it being, myself, Pete, and say your mom, we just talked about her, holding keys, why can't it just be one person with different digital, where the keys are in different digital spaces? Can we turn this thing on its head and make people more secure? Because it is the single private key problem, right? Your key is also your vault. Any 5-year-old can tell you that if the key is sticking out of the vault is not secure. So why do we put up with that in blockchain? And more importantly, why are the ground level users forced to get into that when, $15-20 might be a drop in the hat for me or you, but it might be someone's food for the next week? We need to address that in order to make blockchain accessible. It needs to be social too. And that's why we've started down the road of universal account names. These are aliases that give users easy access and point to any blockchain. They're built for the interchain Web3. And that's the vision of the future we see as well. And it's connected. This interchain infrastructure connects to any wallet on any blockchain and allows for kind of dApp developers, which is kind of the end part of this, to connect to new markets and users and access products and services that impact their lives. So the real concept is let's protect and let's connect people and let's end the problems with ease of use and peace of mind so that everyone, starting from the ground part of that Maslow's hierarchy, can access blockchain and the revolutionary power that decentralized technology can bring. So that's our purpose.
Wow. That is deep. And I really like that alignment with Maslow's hierarchy of needs there, Jesse, because when you get down to the core of humanity, right? Security, right there. And security can be expressed through a number of different means. And when you put it right down into what Simon Taylor likes to call the financialization of everything, right? Yeah. That, does security, does technology, does blockchain, does that allow any expression of security in your life to be locked down and secure? Anything that needs to be secured, can that be secured?
And it's not just money, right? Like we focus so much on the financial side, but data is a huge thing as well. This system that we are building needs to work to effectively create self-sovereignty for people everywhere and be easy enough to use that, as we said, my grandma or your mom can access it and can derive value from it, because we're not going to get there by speculation and by, the top of the stack, so to speak. So.
Okay. Well, you said, you can see the future, which means you have a time machine. I like to think that I might have one too, but in a little humble one. Not you may have the, the Doc Brown DeLorean. I've got the 1984 Ford Escort two-tone with a missing sunroof, right? Which I actually did have one of those way back in the day.
Really?
So, yeah.
I'm a car person, so we have a lot of other conversations to have. That's amazing.
So what does the world look like when TrustWare is an absolute necessity? Because you and I can sit here right now and talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and talk about security. And I can see the two of us, buzzing and vibing off this because we think we know what this is going to look like. But for the rest of the world, why don't you share with them what this world does look like when TrustWare is an absolute necessity?
It's my favorite thing to think about every day. So glad you asked. Going back to this, blockchain technology, at least in theory, we believe, again, democratizes access to a more equitable economy. And we believe in a world where TrustWare is an absolute necessity, that it connects everyone in the world to this economy through what we call a universal social network for value. Kind of a big, lofty goal. But as we said, let's start small. We're starting with kind of this secure social wallet concept. That's an account name on one side and a secure vault on the other. The idea is that no longer is it 0xJ59, something that is frankly scary to most people and really hard to manage for even natives. It becomes a social alias that can follow you across and is interoperable across all of Web3 and the decentralized web. So that's on one side of it, and that's for ease of use. And then the other side of it is that secure vault. It's our proprietary multi-sig design, but where does this all go? It moves into the social network of value, and eventually we think there's going to be some sort of interchain app store that connects users and wallets to what we are really looking at is validated dApps in a global blockchain community. We see blockchain as inherently social, but there are silos of users and value in all of these different places, be it L1s, L2s, et cetera. And the idea with kind of this interchain and interoperable name system and the ability to kind of drop security onto hot wallets is that you can start bringing people from where they are, whether it's on the Web2 social layer, which we're also looking to support and building to support, all the way up to I have a MetaMask. We're bringing them all together. And now a lot more of the relationships that exist in real life, going back to the psychological side of providing value, can be expressed on TrustWare. So the easiest one and the one we've started is the peer-to-peer. I can send money or an NFT or data to Pete in a transaction. That's great, but let's make a social difference. Let's do donor recipient. It's the same tooling on the back end, the same infrastructure that we've started with on the security and ease of use layer. But now we've got, GoFundMe essentially, but without anyone taking their cut, so to speak, in the middle, which is the vision that is expressed, by Bitcoin from the get-go, right? Without third parties, so to speak. So building this infrastructure layer allows that to happen. It may allow you and your friends all with your TrustWare accounts to go and sit in a multi-sig vault together, which can be a DAO, which can be a community, which can help one of your friends buy a house without the need to use the bank. Or you have a rental property together and all of us together can get the real world yield back. Or you've provided water for a community that didn't have it before. The solutions are all there once you've built the bottom layer, the infrastructure layer, and we see a world where people can express the top of this hierarchical stack, the Maslow's hierarchy, which is the self-actualization, the expression. They can express that and be creative with how they build for this world while also kind of connecting to the users underneath. So that's like the grand vision, right?
Yeah, I love it how you pull that all together, Jesse. And we could sit here from our point of view in the year 2023, and with what is in effect coming on to a year old startup, right? But with a lifetime of vision and experience that is built the momentum to get you here, and say, all right, this is the world we're building for. You will get some curveballs along the way, right? And you don't want to be Pedro Serrano. Do you remember who Pedro Serrano is?
No, please.
He's from the movie Major League. He was the player that could not hit curveballs, and he prayed to a god named Jobu. Okay. So you want to be able to hit the curveballs. You want to be able to anticipate the curveballs that are going to come your way. Do you think you've identified some of the stitches on the seam of that curveball coming towards you already? And what do you think that's gonna do when that ball starts dipping, ducking, and diving towards you as it approaches home plate?
Wow. The visual there is awesome. I remember playing ball with my dad as a kid. Man, we've had a lot of these conversations too. I think that's the beauty of the Techstars, of the Techstars cohort and of the program, is talking a lot about the curveballs and having the insight to them. So this is not just me, right? This is kind of having almost a shotgun or a broader approach to looking at it. But at the core level, this is a huge market, and this social network of value idea touches everyone involved. A lot of people are targeting this space, and that happens on the Web 2 side as well as the Web 3 side. And more importantly, these are people with a ton of resources and the ability to quickly move into blockchain and Web 3. I like to look at this, and Jonathan and I spend a lot of time thinking about a world where we can co-opt our competition, because the purpose is more important, or what we like to say is the outcome is more important than the income. But we deal with this really by leveraging our competitive advantages as a startup. And that's right now, this is speed and flexibility. We are really trying to be forward facing and develop technology for the next generation of blockchain. So this is kind of going back to that interchain idea, pulling data and liquidity from different blockchains. We think that we can kind of be small, nimble, and work in that way. We definitely have concerns, and I know this is stuff we've talked about too, about coming regulation as a US company. This is one of those things where we're prepared to deal with it, and blockchain and crypto, Web3 is international. We've met so many people, especially from this cohort, that are building all over the place. So it's less of a concern on a personal level, but we are starting out in a way where we don't necessarily need to move money on and off chain. And where it touches the current financial system, I think is the biggest question for a lot of us working in this space. Without proper regulation, or at least an understanding of where it's going, it's really hard to build for the future. And that also involves CBDCs. We sit in a very kind of self-sovereign concept, decentralized self-custody role in this space. And there is a lot of threat to that from these CBDCs if they're not implemented correctly, or if they overstretch into users, privacy and can be shut off. I mean, there's many bad models that could be done versus these dynamic public blockchains that we've seen actually work and continue. So,
and can you remind our friends what CBDCs are?
Yeah, it's a central bank digital currency. And if you are at all privy to the macro conditions right now, won't go into it too deeply, but some of those words might scare you a little bit. So macro issues
I'm not a
are
fan.
another thing.
I'm not a fan of CBDCs. I think they're a reality. I think central banks will launch these. I think there's going to be a bunch of car crashes before they actually get one running. But
Yeah.
it's good technology, but I think it's just a conflicting usage of it that worries me a bit.
It's so hard to say without seeing one that has worked. But on the flip side of this, we see Bitcoin working. We see many other blockchains that that have reached critical mass and network effect working. Really hard to see a world where there isn't some carnage from one kind of butting in or forcing essentially the decentralized sides out, because it just is not in line with the way that governments exact power currently. So we'll see how the world shapes up in that way. I think the last thing is farther out is quantum, right? Really cool to look at all of this stuff right now. But, this is a conversation that Jonathan and I have on the weekends, so we don't cut into our time. But it's like, what does this look like when proof of work gets potentially compromised by quantum? We have some ideas on that too. So
I bet you do.
Yeah.
I bet you do. And it was good to see in your investor update other things that you were thinking about for the weekends, including contemplating a potential pivot. And before anybody gets too worried, a pivot is actually a kind of ice cream, as it turns out, that you can get in the Canary Islands where you are right now. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, I thought that was a really funny picture to send to you guys for our update.
That was.
I'm
And then
glad
in
you
reading
liked it.
your thesis, your senior, or flipping through your senior thesis, I kind of saw some more of that wit at the beginning of it, at the very least. And, so I'm definitely starting to understand Jesse Phillips. Just thinking about, there's a lot of things that go into being a startup founder. And there's one that I like to call, and I've taken this from another podcast, obviously. So The Full Ratchet, that I listened to get kind of my master's in VC a few years ago, if that's a thing. And that they refer to a concept called the earned secret, right? And that your life's experience has driven you in a certain direction. And there's things that you tend to know that others generally don't know, or that believe to be false. So it's something that you believe to be true that others believe to be false. Is there anything that you can point to in your time so far on this planet that you could call your earned secret?
Yeah, I am relatively young on this planet, and so I don't claim to be some sort of Yoda or anything.
Okay.
I look to Jonathan for that. But I think the one thing that I'll go two sides of this, right? I'm a proof of work maximalist in a DeFi body, is what I like to say. So I really think that computation is just as valuable as a gold bar. And I really nerd out over the economics of it. I also think that, just coming over from the mining side, that the way that Satoshi built Bitcoin, it's the energy consumption is by design, not by accident. And I think we can fix a lot of the environmental issues that we have right now in terms of sustainability with that, which is not a popular thing. I've been on many news channels and podcasts and tried to spin this into something that the rest of the world could hear, and it almost never works. It's not the current agenda. The other side of it is a lot more personal in terms of the earned secret, which is, I think that working for purpose is the only way to achieve something meaningful. And that's an earned secret for myself. I spent many years with this idea that you could effectively create a nut, right? Like you could go out there, do what you're good at in the space that you're, kind of in, be it crypto, blockchain, whatever else you're in, kind of make your nut and then transition into the thing that makes you tick, or your higher calling. And I think that is, it's a privileged way of thinking for sure, because I was able to save up enough, and Jonathan as well, to, make a startup happen, which is by no means a cheap thing to support yourself. And it's very difficult, but I find my internal energy, and I think we both share this, is driven by purpose. And if you're not aligned on that, I don't think you can achieve your highest calling. And so that's kind of the earned secret. As long as you keep in line with what is good and true, you win. You win for the world, right? So
you do. And it gives me chills, because it reminds me of a conversation I had with my wife, Jessie, where she said, what's going to happen with one of these startups actually hits it out of the park? What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to keep working with founders.
Yes, and I know that from your person, we went through the onboarding process, but it's only been a couple weeks, but you are the type of person that I could imagine, you make $1 billion and you are still sitting here supporting people because this is what you love, and it comes out.
It is absolutely what I love. So no, that's so cool to have you bring that out for sharing. Yeah. So thank you, Jesse. Listen, we're at the point in time in the podcast where we like to ask this last question that we ask everybody. What's the one thing that people wouldn't expect to know about Jesse Phillips?
Oh man, I can get in a suit and be incredibly corporate, but for about 11 days a year, you're going to find me out covered in dust at Burning Man usually.
Nice.
Yeah. And that is, I think, a really important thing for anyone that is looking at creating products and or just a vision for tomorrow. There's so much there beyond the partying and the music and the drugs. If that's what you're into, cool. But if you're looking for a meaningful connection and, people in a place where immediacy matters, and the ability to go much deeper, and the ability to look into someone's eyes and say, I see you not for what facade you put on or what you have built around you, or what you make, in terms of a dollar denomination or hopefully Satoshis or, one day, but for who you are. I think that's a place that almost everyone should go, at least for a little while, and seek out that part, because it is a place where a lot of these ideas start and or get actualized into things that change the world. And truly a treat to be fortunate enough to experience it for multiple times now.
Truly. And if you just get that one thing, you get that one nugget of something that helps you, that you take away from that whole experience. Could be a little, I don't know, just a frame of mind that you can put yourself into upon command, upon demand, that you take with you back into your life and away from Burning Man. I've never been there, but I'd love to go.
You are the type of person that would get a lot out of it. And also the little bit of discomfort, I truly believe this. Discomfort, I think, is the first shell to crack before you can really achieve what you need to. And that's an entrepreneurship thing as well, right? Constantly being okay with a little discomfort.
Oh, big time. No, and little word of advice, that how frequently I see startups meandering and confusing motion with progress when they fall into their comfort zone, and they go into their comfort zone of okay, I'm going to keep doing this thing that makes it feel like I'm doing something and that I'm progressing, but I'm actually just doing busy work. Right. So there's, discomfort is absolutely critical. When my younger sister kind of, just observing her, and that in the 90s, she spent that time on the East Coast of the US, the late 90s, after she spent some time over here in Ireland, just kayaking and on the kind of pro kayak tour. And she found constant change was her comfort, right?
Yeah.
And that not ever having that one thing in one place to do became comfortable for her. And that when she started to settle down, that's where it was like, oh, geez, I got to keep doing more stuff. Right. So that is an interesting trait to have. But, with TrustWare, we do want that sense of things not changing that much. Right.
No, I mean, at the ground level, what we're trying to build is for forever. Right. We believe that the security stuff that is coming over is tried and true. And it's, the way that we've implemented it on the technology side, I think is sustainable, at least for the next kind of major wave of bringing people into this. But a little bit back to that point, like, this is also, sustainability comes in your actual product and it comes in your business. And I'm rather comfortable with a little bit of chaos and kind of the ups and the downs and the discomfort and kind of the yin and yang. Jonathan is on the other side, and together we actually achieve the ability to be focused, which at this stage at least is probably the most critical thing. So Absolutely. Big vision, small product that we're releasing, super excited for the future, and just to be supported by Techstars and by your vision as well, Pete. And the mentorship we've been given thus far has been just an absolute treat and truly magnificent for our trajectory. So hope to change the world with you and with your help, and can't thank you enough.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I am surprisingly most active on LinkedIn, actually. That is probably the best way. But you can also email myself, jesse@trustware.io, jonathan@trustware.io. Would love to hear from you. And if you do manage to find me on Telegram, which is my full name, I will eventually answer. So, yeah.
All right. Super cool. Well, listen, Jesse, thank you so much. This was an incredible chat. I appreciate how deep you took me. So thank you.
Pete, always a pleasure. Looking forward to the next one.
That does it for this week, folks. Thanks to Jesse Phillips for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. You can learn more about Jesse Phillips, Jonathan Fraser, and TrustWare in the show notes on our website, moneyneversleeps.ie, or just check them out on trustware.io. If you like what you heard, please leave us a rating and or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as it helps others to find the show. Thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early stage startup investor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3, and I run the Techstars Web3 Accelerator. There are plenty of links in the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie on how to get in touch, so don't hesitate to reach out. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.